So what has been the situation been like at the Bangladesh-Myanmar border since the Friday clashes?
Well, as you know, since the clashes that happened on Friday between the insurgent group and the security forces in Myanmar, a huge number of people, about thousands of people, have tried to flee from the Myanmar and cross the Naf River, which divides Bangladesh and Myanmar, and they are stuck in the no man's land on Bangladesh border because the border guards are not letting them in inside Bangladesh, but they cannot go back because military troops have been deployed at Rakhine State after the clashes. So there's been a surge in violence against the Rohingya Muslims who, have stayed back. So they're just basically stuck, and there are thousands of people just stuck at the border of Bangladesh, trying to get in and trying to find a safe space from the violence. So that's basically what's happening right now.
And how have the Bangladesh government reacted to the recent attack and the influx of the new refugees at the border?
Bangladesh has had a very strong stand on this issue for a very long time now. There's basically a zero tolerance policy at the border. They do not want to take in more people into the country. And they've stated this very vehemently from the government and from the Bangladesh border guard forces as well. So given the recent attacks, they did turn back boats full of people, boats full of women and children. They asked them to go back to the village, go back to the violence, despite what's been happening. So that's kind of been the initial reaction. Despite all the hard talk, though, approximately 3,500 people have been led inside the country to settle into the refugee camps on the borders. But a lot of people are still at the borders, and the Bangladesh government and the border guard forces are still very vehement on not letting them into the country.
Well, thank you for that, Silma Suba there from Dhaka. And now we're joined by Alex Bookbinder, who joins us from Yangon in Myanmar. Hi, Alex. So the discrimination against the Rohingya has been going on for so long, and since no political solution has been found, do we see these fighter groups forming, taking matter into their own hands?
Well, I think that, to some degree, what you do see with this insurgent group, this ARSA, the Arakan Rohingya Solidarity Army, is it's not so much that at least superficially as it is incitement from people from outside that have found some sympathy among local people in Rakhine State. Atta Ullah, the founder of and the putative leader of ARSA, was born in Pakistan, raised in Saudi Arabia, and came back and found at least a somewhat sympathetic ear among a very small proportion of the population there. I think that that's also not to say that there are any links between ARSA and other, or any sort of transnational Islamist groups. There are not, as far as we can tell, despite what the Myanmar government has said. ARSA has they have concrete goals that are, related to restoring freedom of movement and citizenship rights for Rohingya Muslims in Rakhine State.
And how has the Aung San Suu Kyi-led government responded to these latest clashes, Alex?
Well, I think that it's at least from where I'm sitting, I feel that it's been rather disappointing. Before the onset of resurgent violence in October 2016, the Suu Kyi government was very much, didn't encourage the use of the word Rohingya or the word use of the word Rakhine, but said there's Muslim communities in Rakhine State and Buddhist communities in Rakhine State. But we've seen a very, very sharp increase in negative rhetoric here. The state councilor's office, which is her office, has put out statements on Facebook calling the insurgents extremist Bengali terrorists, she actually put out a statement recently saying that aid workers, international aid workers, have been colluding with the insurgents, which is an extremely dangerous thing to say. Because there's no evidence to suggest that that's the case, and by marginalizing aid workers and kind of prompting this anti-aid worker sentiment and anti-Rohingya sentiment, the government, at least in this context, risks making a bad situation worse. Now, there was a commission led by former Secretary General Kofi Annan, who recently finished a fact-finding mission in Myanmar and released a bunch of recommendations as to what the government can and should do to improve the situation in Rakhine State.